And can you tell exactly when we go on live stream?
Yes, I'm watching.
Okay, just give me a heads up when we do.
Okay.
Grover, you've been awfully quiet. And so has Lori. We got to get y'all talking.
Usually not a problem.
Good to go, David.
Okay, welcome everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask the secretary to establish that we've got a quorum. Do we have a quorum?
We do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. The first item of business is to ratify the minutes of the last meeting, and they've been circulated. I assume everybody's satisfied. Does somebody want to make a motion to approve the minute? Okay, Greg, and then Lee seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay. I'm going to make the president's remarks, and as those of you who are watching and those who will see this later, I am not Paula Scanlon. I hope you can tell that. I'm David Ellis. Paula is sick and asked me to take over the duties as vice president. I want to say something first, since Paula's not here, because then she can't respond. Paula has done an absolute great job with this organization. She's been very devoted to it, and she has been unselfish with the time she spent on it. This has been a period of transition for ASPO from everything from changing its name, changing its operators, and trying to come up with a new message. All of the messages that now go out that Jonathan, that you and Lori are doing have been wonderful. Things are moving at a whole different pace and different method. And it's because Paula has really taken the whole thing and devoted such a tremendous amount of time. And so I want to take this time while she's not present, so she can't respond and say anything, to thank Paula. And Paula, I know you're listening, but I think it's very appropriate. On to the president's remarks. Let's talk first about the referendum lawsuit. As those of you who followed it, the motion for summary judgment found for the defendants being CSA, ASPO, and the resort. There is a time for which the plaintiff can ask for reconsideration, and that time is 28 days. It expires on September 25. There's also a time at which the plaintiff can file an appeal, which is 30 days, and that expires September 27. If either of those two things happen, if the plaintiff does file for reconsideration or file an appeal, then the litigation continues. It moves to the Federal Court of Appeals in the Fourth Circuit. And then it would move forward at whatever pace that it would move forward. However, there was a procedure that was agreed on early on between the plaintiff and the defendant, that if CSA wanted to file the Fifth Amendment and put it of record, because it only goes into force when it's put of record to everyone, that they would give 30 days notice to the plaintiff, and the plaintiff would have that 30 days to object, and the court would have to decide what would go forward. CSA has now filed that. They did it on August 31, the notice of intent to file the Fifth Amendment. And if the plaintiff either lets all the appeal go through and doesn't file anything in litigation, then in 30 days passes on this referendum will be actually complete, and the amendment will be filed of record, and CSA will start collecting the $600 in the near future. So how close we are, no one knows, because of those few remaining dates, but everything will become much more clear by the end of this month. If anyone has any questions when we come and we'll talk about this, we can address that. The other thing I think is important is that we are coming to a time for election for our new board members and the start of a whole new regime for next year. And everyone, all the members should be aware that They will be getting ballots and be able to vote. And we appreciate the large number of membership we have. We appreciate everyone voting and given an opportunity to express yourself. I also want to remind you that during this meeting, you can ask questions, and we'll pause for a few minutes and then we'll answer the questions. Does any of the board members have any questions or comments at this stage? Goodness, that's quiet. Kathleen, you want to give the management report?
Yes. So as of this morning, we have 3,244 members. That's up 16 members since our June board meeting. Also, since June's board meeting, we have responded to approximately 15 emails and 67 phone calls. Just a quick reminder, I don't want to steal anybody's shine throughout the rest of the agenda, but we do have the nomination by petition deadline of October 3rd. Meet the candidates night is scheduled for October 25th via Zoom. More information will come out to the members with a YouTube link and to give information on how you can view that. Our election, as you've mentioned, Dave, begins November 1. So just look out in your emails for those electronic ballots. And for those of you who may not have an email on file, please send us an email at info@cpinespoa.com. And then we'll make sure we get your email address on file so you can receive electronic correspondence. For those of you who do not have an email and do not wish to supply an email, you will receive a paper ballot in the mail. Again, the email address for any questions or comments is info@cpinespoa.com, and the phone number is 843-422-7648.
Thank you very much. Anybody had any comments before we go on to the board meeting questions? All right, Grover, I think it's up to you to give a financial report. Tell us how much money we've made in this declining market.
Oh, we're just, killing it. So in your packet, there's a couple of items that I'll cover in our meeting. First be the balance sheet and then be the budget variance. So if you want to flip to the balance sheet, you'll see that in our we have there's three first checking accounts. The first one, the AAB, that's just the one that IMC, our management company, will cut checks from. Then we have our main checking account, and then there's a reserve account for IMC just in case. Morgan Stanley investments, you can see between those two numbers of investments in equity is $348,000. And then if you look down at the investment interest receivable, it takes us, up over $350,000, which is pretty much where we were at the end of March, being that we report these numbers quarterly. The reason we haven't gone down substantially with the market is the fact that we have continued to be in a very, very conservative position with our investments, and i.e. When the market turns and everybody's cruising, we're not going anywhere. But when it goes down, we're not going anywhere. So that's kind of where we are. So 423,000 overall in the bank, or 25,000 in the bank. Liabilities and equity, you can see where that equals out with retained earnings and current year earnings, which current year earnings is our dues less the expenses thus far this year. So it tells you, that's a quick glance at what we've collected that in excess of expenses thus far. So total liabilities and equity at 425. Any questions on the balance sheet?
Let me make a comment, Grover, it's in line with what you said. The basic financial investment policy is a very conservative one. It's basically the same that municipalities have. You invest in secured, guaranteed investments. And, no speculative investments because you cannot risk the public's money or in this case, the members' money. And that's what Grover, you were saying, but I think it's the wisest choice for investment for organizations like us to be the same as municipalities. But anybody have any other questions or comments? All right, Grover.
All right, let's flip over to budget variance. So a lot of numbers here. The first you'll see is the current period. Then you'll see year to date. And then you'll see annual at the end. So annual is the actual budget that we came up with. And then you can see actual, and this is kind of 6 months in, so it's a good glance at how we stand. So I would just, you look at under year to date, look at actual, and then let your eyes flip over to annual. And that's the best way. And just keep in mind we're halfway in. So our total income is at 165,660. We budgeted 174.5. That grows slightly. You can see we picked up about $3,700 in this last quarter. So we're going to be pretty close to where we budgeted. Reserve income has to do with, again, our investments. And we are, if you add that to it, again, we're at 168,287. Administrative, as far as expenses, management fees. This is the company, the IMC, that does all of our administrative work. We budgeted 35,000 for the year. We're currently at 15 through 6 months, so we're in line there. Legal, we budgeted 35,000, not knowing at the time with the lawsuits what would be. So we're at 11. I would think that we're going to be not spending all that money because some of this stuff is resolved and we've paid some deductibles that we had. But we're in good shape thus far going there. Bank service charges, that's just credit card fees when you pay your dues via credit card. Website, Paula has really steered us into having a much better presence online than what we had, and that's more of a maintenance issue there. Communication services, that's dues, any kind of meeting expense, annual meetings, quarterly meetings, etc. We budgeted 27,000 for the year. We're currently right at 15, so we should be close there. Accounting, again, we still have to file a return as a nonprofit and occasionally have some services, but that's going to run a little over annually what we thought about. And then we just put in $5,000, not knowing what would come up if it didn't fall under these few expense items, and we're well below that annually for the year. Going down to property liability insurance, you can see we budgeted 30,000, only spent 5,800, but the last quarter of the year we have a big policy that comes in with liability and the director and officer insurance. Last year that was around 25,000. So that's we'll probably spend that 30,000 for the year end. So as you can see, we've spent total of around, what's that, 45,000 in administrative and overall around 51,000. So I think we're in good shape with revenue. I think we're in good shape with control of expenses. And this completes my report through 6 months, David.
Okay. Any questions? Oh, you did pretty good then. Nobody has any questions. That's good explanation. All right, we'll move on to the next thing. Lee, Architectural Review Board.
The report from the ARB is included in the packet and was posted to the website. Nothing striking there as far as major changes or anything like that. We continue to see pools on a regular basis. Seems to be a lot of pools proliferating in sea pines. In a lot of cases, much to the chagrin of the neighbors. So we've continued to look at the guidelines on pools and where they need to be placed in people's yards and things like that. You also may notice that the number of lots remaining has dropped over the last 2 years as people are building new construction. And in addition to that, I think I've mentioned this the last couple of meetings, as we've seen at other seashore communities of our age or older, we're now starting to see a greater number of tear downs where people are buying existing properties that were built in the 70s and tearing them down and building a new house. So, and I think that will be continuing for some time to come. So that's everything I have, unless there's any questions on the ARB report.
Anyone? Okay, no questions. Laurie, we talk about communications.
I'm very excited that tomorrow night is our first of our third Tuesday Sea Pines POA speaker series. It's at 5 o'clock at the Sea Pines Community Center, which is in the Sea Pines Shopping Center on Lighthouse Road. And our first speaker is Greg Russell, and he's going to regale us with his insights about having performed under the Liberty Oak here for over 45 years. And then the series will continue through into the spring. We're taking December off, and our last one of the season will be in May. So we have 8 speakers lined up. And if you go to our website, you will see all the speakers that we have in store for our members. And it's a pretty exciting lineup. I think we're going to learn a lot and have fun and get to meet each other. As far as other communications, I, along with John and staff, have enjoyed getting things a little more ramped up. As most people have seen, we put out a monthly newsletter from the POA, and we tend to try and share with our members things that we think they may not know that might be helpful about how to have a better life in Sea Pines and Hilton Head in general, and what amenities are available to us that people might not know. We also talk about things that are going on in the political specter, not politics per se, but any new consequential regulations, both specific to Sea Pines or generally to Hilton Head, Beaufort County, South Carolina, and how those might affect our members and things people need to be thinking about. And then we also put in the occasional flavorful little something you weren't expecting, including magnificent photos that headline a lot of our stories, compliments of Bill Pender. And anybody who doesn't know Bill's photography, you just can't get enough of it. John, have I missed anything? You're clearly, John's leading the charge in making sure that our website is a source of great information, including we are working on a community calendar that will live on the website and give people a place to go see things that they might want to do, like the speaker series tomorrow night. And I think that's going to be a wonderful resource. And of course, we're also working on getting our ducks in a row for upcoming Sea Pines POA elections. So people will have an opportunity to learn where and how they can meet the candidates and who they're going to want to vote for. So Greg, I'm sure, can tell people more about that since he leads that charge. Okay, now have I forgotten anything, John?
You know, since we're talking about the website, I'll just mention that we're working on listing all of the neighborhood POAs. So residents will be able to go to the site and find their local POA, and we'll include links to their website if they have one. And then as far as the speaker series, if you forget to RSVP, please come anyway, and you can register at the event.
Let me ask a question. Great report. Let me ask a question. What's the number that we have responded? Hold on. What's the number that has responded to come tomorrow?
Kathleen, can you update us on that?
Yep, as of this morning, we have 71 RSVPs.
Wow.
Okay.
And I suspect and hope that people will just walk in. If you're a member of the POA, it's free. If you're not, we're going to encourage you to become one because it's only $50 and there's a whole lot of benefits that come with it. But anybody can come. We have seating for 120 and a little standing room only wouldn't hurt. And it's BYO, whatever you want to bring. You can bring non-alcohol, alcohol, whatever you want. Bring what you want to drink and then take it away with you. We're not going to have a whole bunch of bottles sitting around.
And is there going to be an online opportunity? Okay.
Nope.
All right. Any questions on this whole area is brand new to the POA and offering. And I have to tell you, from when Lori and John started this from the very first time on, I have been thoroughly impressed with it. I think it is a great addition to what the POA can offer and present for its members and keeping us involved in everything. So if for no other reason, getting this information that you're putting out is a main reason to join the POA. All right, I'm gonna go to the Covenant Reform Task Force. Lee?
Yeah, actually, the Covenant Reform Task Force has not met since our last meeting, so I have no additional information at this time.
Okay. On legal, Paula was going to give that, and she wanted to talk about 88 Lawton. At this stage, as I understand it, the cost and attorney fees of enforcing this and the court action are being presented to the attorneys for the defendant. And if they're not accepted, it'll be taken to the court for a decision on awarding an amount of money, whatever that may be determined. At this stage, we really don't have much other information. I do expect very shortly there will be some new information that will be available. And if it's, if maybe when it becomes available, Lori, Jonathan, could be something that y'all can put in the newsletter. But at this stage, I think that's where we are. All right, on LUM, Greg.
Land Use Committee has been active. We have several members. It's a CSA committee now. It used to be a joint committee between the POA and CSA. And as of the first of the year, it's now a CSA committee, but the POA is well represented in membership. A couple of things that are happening over there. One is there's been a lot of work done this year on roadside barriers. So if you look around the community, you'll see that people have put rocks and posts and all kinds of things to protect their either their driveway or their yard from truck and car traffic. And so it's kind of a dog's breakfast of what's out there. Some of it is dangerous for pedestrians or cyclists if they have to get out of the way quickly because of vehicle traffic. So we're near the point of completing our work and hope to make a recommendation to the CSA board probably at their November meeting. The other topic that we monitor there is what's happening with land use monitor activities, and we get a report and have a nice discussion of what the pattern of communication he puts out to folks who are not in compliance with the rules. And I guess I would say that for the most part, the members of our community do a nice job of responding when a infraction or violation of the rule, if you will, is pointed out to them. They're great about responding. There's always that relatively small number of people who you have to keep nudging along, but we've been successful at getting compliance. That said, there's conversation about where we go with compliance to the rules and working with the town of Hilton Head and their new ordinance for short-term rentals. And as you might expect, many of the violations that Ryan works on have rental properties as kind of at the center. So people don't know the rules. Some rental agencies do a better job of helping their clients understand this is a residential community and you're a guest here, and we'd like you to follow the rules and regulations that keep our community beautiful and safe. So it remains an active committee. I don't think that the POA has lost any presence or influence on the committee by having it revert to a CSA primary committee or a CSA run committee. That is my report on land use management. Anybody want to add anything or has a question?
Well, let me add a couple of things. One is, the town is gearing up for this, and it was what they're doing is searching and trying to hire the people that will enforce and inspect and enforce. They hope to be gearing up by the end of the year, is what I understand.
Correct.
But staffing is staffing and acquiring staffing to do this is a real issue. The number of people that I understand they're looking for, if they're going to police the entire island, it's going to be, it's still going to be too few people. But that's the status of what I understand in the town. I will say this from my experience with short-term rental and being chairman of the committee on CSA, that this summer I have received far less communications about complaints. So if that's any indication, it seems that many of the issues are being resolved, though they are still issues, they are still complaints, and there's still ongoing, situations. But the tremendous number that we experienced over the past year and a half, almost 2 years, at least as far as my perception is, because of the number of communications I received is down significantly. Anybody else have any comments?
I think, David, I think you're right in terms of the traffic and the number of renters going down. I think we're almost back to normal now. And I think that, there's always room for improvement with the folks who rent their community and making sure they're communicating to their renters and they understand it. The other thing is we're an old community and, it's damp here and we have problems with mold and all the things that you would expect that Brian stays after and does a really nice job with folks and making sure we keep the community looking as great as it can be. So it's an ongoing kind of process and thank goodness people are cooperative and do what they need to do.
Any other questions or comments before we leave this topic? Yes,
Hey,
Karen.
David. So Greg, with LUM being 2 years in existence now, are we beginning to collect data and begin to look at the types of different issues and categorize those different types of issues? And so going forward, we can begin to have some history and be able to look back historically and see, time of the year where things occur so that we might, from a staffing perspective, look at how we might better staff to address some of the more summer related issues than in the past.
Sure, Carrie, that's a great question. The POA funded half the cost of a tracking program for Ryan to use that will build a database of, what kind of violations and when and all that. And we monitor that on a monthly basis. I think that it is time. It's been around long enough, and we've had, the pandemic occur. I think it's time to go back and see if there's trends. What are the changes? So I think we're at a good point to do that. But to be honest with you, I haven't seen, a 3-year, 5-year kind of summary of where we are.
I know, some of the folks that I talk with, their biggest concern, or I shouldn't say biggest, one of their biggest concerns is during the summer with the influx of renters, parking, noise, etc. So I think it'd just be helpful for us to better understand kind of our peaks and valleys when enforcement is most critical. And the fact that right now we just have the one, LUM employee, so to speak. How might we better address those higher need times so that we can be more responsive to the summer related issues, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And Sam is committed to hiring more staff, but as we all know, the labor market is extremely tight, and some of the ads were not, they weren't budgeted for this year. So that's going to get corrected as we go forward. So I think we're going to have more manpower. But my sense, just looking at it and thinking about it as a month-to-month kind of review process, it follows what you would intuitively expect. When the volume of people goes up in the community, you're going to see more problems with parking and bikes, as you mentioned. So I think it gets to the point of, what's the old 80-20 rule? I guess is my way of thinking about it. There's probably some relatively small set of problems that drive most of the issues, and how do we help property owners and people who rent deal with those things. And so more labor to get out and help people understand the rules, and whether or not they're in compliance, I think will help. And I think we're kind of early in that journey. But to your point, it's time to see where those trends are and what we can do to fix them.
Thank you.
Lee, you're on mute, Lee.
Thanks for reminding me. Just an additional comment to Greg's, and that is the other thing we're learning, I think, because Ryan's tenure has been here for a while, is where we need to make adjustments in the rules we've already put in place. So he's been great at giving us feedback on pushback that he's getting on things, or where he needs a rule tweaked to better enforce it. So that's the other thing that's coming out of having somebody in place consistently for a couple of years there.
Yeah, great point. Yep.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Lori, membership committee?
Okay. The membership committee met on August 22nd. It's several new members, so it was more of a brainstorming session. We talked about making members aware of the value of being at the POA, joining the POA. We broke it down into how could we better retain members? How could we get new members and make them see the value? We talked about this at the workshop, the board workshop, but basically the major points, the takeaways that came out of it were that starting by the communications committee and Paula, with the emails, the newsletters, the speaker series, that they were really starting to engage the community, and we needed to focus on those and continue those. They were very pro all that is being done. The second was we talked about creating a calendar, and apparently that's an idea that's kind of been all of ours, because Jonathan and I had talked about it, and Lori and I had talked about it, and Paul and I had talked about it. So I'm really excited to see that moving forward. And I think that will be a tremendous value to the community, just like the membership directory. If they see that that website is a place that they can go for information, I think that's a good thing. One of the other ideas that came out of the brainstorming session was to create a BRAC card or a small card that simply explained the differences between the memberships that you could belong to on Hilton Head. You know, there's CSA mandatory, there's POA voluntary, there's your neighborhood POA voluntary, and then there are the regimes which are required. So I think it's confusing to people. And if we had just a small explanation of that we could include in an annual mailing. And further, the idea was to bring a group of these cards to local realtors. So when they're talking to someone at closing or who is interested in knowing what they might join in Sea Pines, that could be a good idea. We talked about having a biannual new members meeting. We did that once in the past. We did not get a tremendous response, but it was very tail end of COVID. And I think that might have influenced it. So we would like to try that again at some point in the future. And then the last point, and interestingly, this is already in motion, is become more active with the smaller POAs in the neighborhoods. As much as having an annual meeting with them where Paula could run a meeting and have them bring their issues to the Sea Pines POA. That was basically the discussion that we had. It seems great that already we're moving forward on most of those tasks that we came up with. And that would conclude my report.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Yep.
A lot of work, a lot of
Yes.
work being done.
It is a lot of work, and everybody's had a lot of work on everything y'all doing. The reports have been excellent. Nominating committee, Greg?
Thank you, David. The nominating committee has been diligent in their work. We're on schedule with the things we need to do. I'd like to thank Lee and Lori for their work in supporting me as the chairman. They really did a nice job of recruiting people. We have excellent candidates, Ed Hughes and Keith Burns and Carrie. You can go on the website and take a look at their resumes, background, experience. Ed Hughes has done legal work for the POA. He's a great guy, knows a lot about Sea Pines, been a resident here since '71. Keith Burns is a guy who has spent a lot of time in the financial accounting world and also a lot of time on corporate governance. So he brings some new skills. And Carrie is also a candidate. And we're glad to see Carrie run because he brings a nice background in information technology. He's an entrepreneur, just a lot of nice things that will add to the skill set of the board. Kathleen mentioned earlier the calendar for the election process, and meet the candidates will happen the end of next month. We'll have reminders going out, and then voting will happen in December, and then we'll announce candidates in mid-December. So we're right on track and excited about the people who are running. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. We really, I'm really happy that we have such qualified candidates that are running and skills they're going to be bringing to this organization. And it's an outstanding group, much better than people like me when I was running.
You're too humble.
No, I don't know about that, but thank you. Website, John?
Yeah, I think we covered it under communication. So
I didn't know if you wanted to add anything else. Okay,
thanks, Dave.
we'll go to the unfinished business, which is also partly you.
Right. So yeah, we talked about creating, a repository for documents that the POA has, we don't really have them housed anywhere. So I went ahead and created a Dropbox folder for all of us, for all editors, where we can start saving items. So right now we have like the new communications charter saved there. There's a website SOP that I wrote that I saved there. So we kind of are starting to work with IMC and talking about what type of documents, and they don't necessarily have to live in this folder. I think we might transfer that ultimately to IMC, and they can hold it. But just wanting to have a central location where we can have all of our information so that if members rotate off or there's a change of leadership, we don't lose that historical information.
Are you including in that the legal documents, the history of ASBO being organized and what they've done through the years as to various things? Because there's an awful lot of litigation and settlements and documents that are important to what happened in the earlier years, particularly regarding this organization.
That's a great question, and that's the question actually Kathleen had posed this weekend. I think to Paula was asking, what do we ultimately want there? And my vote is everything, right? We want to make sure, like you said, all the historical and legal settlements, et cetera, are all listed. So those are the types of things we're going to start to work out. Okay,
and I have copies of a number of those documents because I've read them because I couldn't help myself being a lawyer. So,
sure.
So if you can't locate them, you need some assistance identifying them. I could probably, help you very much. Awesome. And
Thank
there's
you.
also
David?
Yes.
The words you just said, if you can't locate them, I think implies that a person knows what we don't have. And I think that's not a safe assumption that, that we don't know what we don't know. So perhaps if you have documents like that, maybe we get them over to IMC and they can just scan them in. Worst case scenario, we already have them. But,
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's excellent point. Thank you for that. One other thing, I don't know how many of you read Daniel's book about the early years through a certain period of time about the organization and development of sea pines. And he's got a lot of history relating to ASPO in there and things that they have done. And one of the questions that's always been somewhat not understood, because there've been we've not been able to locate old minutes of the board of ASPO going back to obtain this. But at one time, there's not only ASPO, but there was the advisory board. And somewhere along the line, in the early 70s, the advisory board and ASPO took over the function of the advisory board. The name was changed from ASPO and the advisory board, and that change was a charter amendment to the corporation. There are some functions given to the advisory board in the covenants and functions given to ASPO in the covenants. So I'll dig through my files and get you what I have, but Daniel's book is very helpful to understand the development of sea pines. And it was interested in the referendum lawsuit. Parts and excerpts from that book were in the briefs of the various attorneys.
What's the name of the book?
I think it's politics. I have to go back and look. It's politics and something. Politics in Paradise, I think.
Yeah.
Power and Politics in Paradise.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a good. It's one person's history, but it adds a lot to it. But the attorneys in their briefing of the thing thought well enough of it that they quoted it and had excerpts in the briefs to support the motion. Okay. Paul is trying to arrange the candidates for the town council to appear and to have a meeting so that members of our organization or property owners in Sea Pine can come and listen to them. She's also, she's trying to do that in sometime in October or November, but nothing's been actually formally set up as of now. We have any other questions, comments? Okay, Laura.
I'd like to ask all of you to email me key dates of upcoming things like meet the candidates and things like that, because coming out of this meeting, I am putting the newsletter together for this month to start telling people what to put on their calendars. So anything that needs to be on there, I really need your help just reminding me what the key dates are and the like. And then lastly, just a sort of a future point of order. If you're going to refer to a Lori, I think you're going to have to use their last name.
I apologize. I was
Right,
thinking about
Lori?
that. Thank you. Well, thank you both, Lori's, for being here.
I'm going to ask you.
Thank you, Lori Wellinghoff, for your service on the nominating committee. I appreciate it.
I'm going to ask you a question. Is there any difference in the pronunciation of Lori with the spelling, or is it exactly the same?
Same.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why.
My last name is hard to pronounce. So you can call me Lori A.
Lori A.
Mhm.
All right.
Lori Wellinghoff's name is hard to spell.
Well, you can call me inappropriate, Lori.
Do we have any questions come in?
Might help if I took myself off of mute. We do have one question in the inbox from Mariana Bartel. The question is, did the board have input in the establishment of the yearly fee people who rent their property will be required to pay? I ask this because I think the fee structure is very unjust. Perhaps CSA could create a fee like the town based on gross income and not the number of bedrooms. Properties with high occupancy would pay more, which makes much more sense.
I'll answer that. I don't think this board has had any input or contact regarding the setting of fees. I think it was entirely a CSA, and we were not involved in any part of that process. So, and I've heard that issue's been raised and several times, but this board was not involved in that since it's a CSA function and it never came to us for comments or position. Any other questions?
That's the only question.
Oh, I was expecting we'd stay here half an hour or so answering. Well, I want to thank all of you for the meeting. It's we can take a motion for adjournment now. Somebody wants to move to adjourn? Greg? Okay, and we got 2 seconds. All in favor? Raise your hand. And now let's go enjoy the good weather, and anybody listening, let's go have a good rest of your day. It was good being with you. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
Everybody.
Bye.